Hey,
Hey there. How are you?
I'm pretty well. How are you?
Good. Getting some things back under control. I had electrical. Did I already tell you this? I had electrical gremlins in my house that
Oh no.
two fridges nerfed the smoke alarms in the house. It destroyed their AC power supply. So they were still working on battery backup.
Yeah.
It worked. They're no longer on house power. What else? Couple of light transformers. We did the it anyway. Long story short, we ultimately traced it to a loose neutral, and
Yeah.
are just in the process of restoring the last few things on that list.
Thanks. Well, I'm glad you got it sorted out.
Yeah, totally. Hey, everybody.
Hello. So as I found out, one of the links on our website is incorrect. Magic is trying to fix it.
Okay.
Some of the committees are not on the calendar too. The grants committee isn't on the calendar or isn't meeting. I guess that's possible. No, I heard that the grants committee met, but it's not on the calendar.
Okay.
They did not meet this month.
Hmm.
I do know that as I made the events on Facebook, and grants didn't have one to post.
Well, I got this from Skipper, who seemed to think she was going, but she could have been mistaken.
I think they met on the 9th.
Yeah.
And I think they're working on what the new time is going to be, but I think it's going to be like the third Thursday or something.
Okay. Best time.
Hello.
Whoa, Reboot, thanks for that sexy intro. Look at those jazz hands.
Meant to be more jazz hands, but sure.
Both sexy jazz hands.
I have developed a new hyperfocus.
Oh, sweet. What?
It's tea. I have like 20 different kinds of tea. Now.
Oh, what's your current favorite? What are you enjoying?
I am currently enjoying a coconut oolong. Who is that cutie? Oh my god.
I know, right?
That's Boo. This is who you're saying no to when you say dogs can't be at critical. Oh,
Oh, that face.
She would hate it. Just kidding.
I don't think I want a coconut oolong, but I am happy for you. How did you decide that tea was the thing now?
I was at a tea shop in Portland, just sort of on a whim, and had a delicious tea, and then realized, oh, tea can be delicious, and so I went all in.
Yeah, which tea shop?
Portal Teas.
Well, you've just missed the tea festival for this year. That was in October. Sorry to break it to you. But I can give you a list of good tea shops in Seattle. I don't know any in Tacoma or South, but I can give you a list of the ones that are fun.
I like fun.
Maybe we can do high tea. It's my favorite, but it's really more about the snacks than the tea.
I would like that.
Yay!
If you need it to be more about the tea, invite me. Hey, hey, hey. Sounds good.
That was a nice poem. I liked it. And then it ended with he. So it was just 3 lines of that's perfect. I love it.
INW high tea.
Yes. He with the board. Very different.
My camp at the burn actually did a tea. It was fun.
My camp at Critical is tea. And so I'm biased.
Maybe change it to wine and tea.
All right. Do we have one? We didn't the last time I counted. We were at 6 board members. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hey, we have 7.
Mhm.
We have 8, maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nope, we have 7. Anyway, we have a quorum and it's after 7 o'clock. So let's go. Let's start with. Actually, let's start with procedural note. So, any parliamentarians in the audience may have noticed that we use the small board rules, or I guess maybe a House variant on those for conducting business in these meetings. They're definitely a good fit because under like heavy Roberts rules, we can't have any discussion outside of a motion, right? So like there has to be, I move that blah, and then we can within that motion debate it, amend it, etc. That's just silly. We're not going to do that. We want access to a thing called, I think, informal consideration, because we want to be able to informally consider things and talk about them and then make a motion and then vote on the motion. I've gotten a little bit of feedback that at the point that we get to a motion, we move kind of quick, and sometimes people have debate that they feel like they didn't get a chance to inject after the point where we got to a motion, and that shouldn't happen. Like nobody should feel like there's not an opportunity to continue debating. It's that kind of motion is absolutely a debatable thing. I'm just gonna like make sure that I ask the question, does anybody have any discussion or debate every time we get to a motion? And then hopefully that means that we won't have anybody feel like we got to a vote before they even had a chance to consider their position. So hopefully that won't feel particularly different, but hopefully it also will help relieve some of the concern that I got the feedback on. Marley, go ahead.
So if we do that, I'd like to try to kind of implement some of the things that I've talked about before, which would be publishing the agenda like the week before so we can get some of this out of the way and not have extended debate during the meeting, and also kind of limit discussion to kind of 2 minutes each time and a certain number of rounds per person. I'd kind of like to formalize that so we're not having endless discussion about each motion.
Anyone have thoughts?
I don't know. I kind of like having the extensive discussion. As long as we've got somebody that's sort of there to keep us on track. But again, I have less experience than most of the other board members, so I haven't had a highly negative experience of it going on too long. Most of the conversations that I've been a part of in the last year and a half have been productive, even if they've been a little roundabout to get to where we needed to get to.
I've got a mixed perspective where I'd prefer a lot of discussion ahead of time so that we understand alignment and stuff beforehand. But I think we're never going to get rid of discussion during a board meeting as the like official place to enact things.
Nonsense, your hand has been up.
I think that would work if we made time and had structured meetings and plans to have those discussions outside of board meetings. I would say there's currently no official or, I think, consistently enforced cadence of having those kinds of offline or like outside of board meeting conversations or discussions. They tend to be relatively informal. So I would say I would suggest that we have a plan for how we're going to do that, and add that to people's expectations for time and scheduling before we restrict discussion in meetings. And that plan can be that people proposing things need to be the ones who schedule those discussions, and we should expect X, Y, and Z amount of time per week or whatever. But I think we need that plan before we go to that route.
Jimmer.
Hey there, yeah. I think that we're all sort of coalescing to a good idea here. One thing I heard in Marley's initial point was if we could get the agenda nailed down in a week previous, I think that would be great. And we do have sort of what nonsense you were talking about. We don't have like a necessary cadence other than what I see as our office hours, right? So those have sort of been the unofficial cadence space for sussing out ideas. So perhaps the 1 week previous for specific agenda items might be directly implementable, and then using those office hours as sort of time to suss it out.
Tuck.
Yeah, I don't like implementing restrictions that would keep us from being nimble. If a situation were to arise, like I don't think that, oh, well, you didn't put this on the agenda a week ago, so we can't make a motion to amend the agenda now. Like for me, that isn't very helpful. So the way it works in Washington government is for a regular board meeting, you can amend the agenda in the meeting, add a new issue, add conversation topics, even take action on a new topic that has been added to the agenda at a regular meeting. Now, for a special meeting, they do require that any action items, there has to be it has to be included in an agenda that's posted in advance. So I think that perhaps we could take a similar approach where our regular meetings are ones where new business is welcome to be raised. But if we're doing something outside of the regular course of business, a special meeting, then we wouldn't be entertaining like a bunch of new potential motions. I think that's a pretty decent way to split it. And ideally, like I think we should just have an understanding amongst each other that as much notice as possible is ideal, and that we're not trying to surprise anybody. But if something comes up, less than a week before the meeting, I just don't want us to be hamstrung from talking about it. So that's my piece.
Any other thoughts before we roll into the agenda? Oh, Marley, your hand is up.
Just to clarify, having an item on the agenda a week before does nothing to limit amending an item during a meeting. And it's pretty standard to have agendas available before a meeting and not published 30 minutes before a meeting. So that's pretty standard in many, many, many organizations.
Yeah, I mean, if we're allowed to amend the agenda and add a new subject that was not previously mentioned to the agenda of a regular meeting, then I don't think there's an issue. But I guess what I heard, it sounded like there would not be conversation allowed on subjects unless they were included a week in advance, which to me seems unnecessarily restrictive, like even more so than government agencies. So just thought I'd say something.
All right. Let's do liaison business. We have DPW in the room. Do we have Tuck? Do you have an update on Rangers?
No updates from Rangers this time around.
Critical reboot.
Hi. Critical is happening. It is happening almost certainly July 14 to 20. we are dotting one more I before announcing that to the community, and that is assuring our dream camp reservation is reserved, because that would be a bummer, but that is almost certainly the date. We have another associate producer, Skipper, and we have 2 more candidates to interview. That's exciting. Some teams are online, others coming online. We have tools in play, including Discord and we're using Google Sites as an internet to sort of host all of our accumulated knowledge. And that's what's going on with Critical.
Cool. Anybody questions? Comments? All right. Hand. Beth Star.
Me. Okay, you have 2 APs. You're looking for a third. Is that what you were saying?
We are entertaining all applicants, and I don't have a discrete number in mind. And I am looking at enlarging the tent this year, and that includes with APs. So it feels to me that so part of that is, among the experiments I'm conducting is doing away with directors and kind of smushing the chart flatter. So having more APs will help accept some of that lost load.
Ooh, that'll be exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
All right. Next would be CComp. I know I saw Radioactive.
Yes. So my co-producer requested a copy of the BECU statements and never got a response. So we are still kind of hammering out the last of the financials, and we would love to get that if we could. But we can go over everything else if you'd like.
Sweet.
So I would say it was a challenging year. It's tough right now. Like, as Jimmer keeps reminding me, we hit our goal of losing only 30,000, but losing anything is not a goal to me. I would say our biggest challenge is the venue. And that is something that has a compounding effect on numerous factors. So, like, beyond just the expense of it, it's a fucking expensive place, let's be real. Like, it's cool as hell, it looks great, but it's expensive. The other issue is it's big. It's really, really big, and we're not a big organization. The capacity is like 8,000 to 10,000 people. We could fit every C compression attendee from 2018 until this year in there at once and not be sold out. Like, we will never sell out the venue. We will never half sell out. We will never 25% sell out. And, you know, if we were breaking even, that might seem okay. But the challenge there is, you know, 1,500 people is a typical C-Comp attendance. But in a space for 8,000, it looks like no one shows. So next year, people look at the pictures of this year and say, oh, that's, you know, it's kind of a failing event. You know, camps bring their stuff and looks like there's no one there. It feels empty. And that makes people less inclined to want to put in that work to volunteer and bring big things and do the stuff and haul all their shit into the middle of downtown Seattle when the event feels empty. It is very much a psychological perception thing, but it's one that we cannot get around. You know, you can't put 1,500 people in a space for 10,000 and look like a successful event, no matter what you do. And when it looks like a failure, the next year people are like, no one was there. I don't know the answer because the community has very diametrically opposed ideas. There is a demand for everyone who does anything at the event to get in for free. But there's also a demand for something that is centrally located with indoor and outdoor space. People complained about the car museum, that it was too far. They complained that it didn't have any indoor space. You can't do indoor space, outdoor space combined in a, you know, a central location and also have people come in for free. Maybe pre-COVID, but something that was an enormous shock to both me and Crash was people don't drink like they did. Alcohol sales were down about more than 50%, probably close to 70-ish. And I'm not sure of the answer to that. Historically, Sea Compression has relied on alcohol sales as its fundraiser. That's one of the few fundraisers Washington allows to a nonprofit. But we went from being on average, most people buying 4 drinks to most people buying 1. There's, you know, we can't charge $30 a drink. That's obscene. I think tickets were already too high, but it becomes challenging as we can't rely on alcohol to bridge the gap. And that isn't necessarily our community. Like media has reported, Americans are just drinking less than they did before the pandemic across the board. And a lot of bars and bartenders are really struggling. Our own bar leads mentioned the same thing that they're seeing in their day job. I have reached out to the org to ask them, like, what are other people doing? Like, you know, can we sell t-shirts? Can we sell mugs? Is that commodification? Is that allowed? How do we bridge that gap? Because Seattle's expensive and starting a please return to binge drinking campaign feels kind of unethical. Like, so that I'm not sure about. I'll let you guys know when Iris gets back to me, but she's bringing it up at their next meeting for the regional committee on the org level. I don't know. It is a major, major paradigm shift. And I hate to sound so corporate about it, but our primary revenue stream is no longer a thing we can count on. And that change is probably for the community's best, not for our financial best, but this was also a very, very issue-free Sea Compression. And I can't help but think they might be related. No one getting trashed and hurting themselves, no one getting trashed and hurting anyone else. First Aid and Rangers were bored out of their minds, which is just what I want. Like, once gates opened, it was so chill that me and Crash were walking around delivering grilled cheese to the volunteers. When does that happen? So I feel like I didn't see anyone who was so drunk in my mind I thought we need to take that person's keys or we need to cut them off. I didn't see, you know, people getting sick, but we didn't make money on booze sales. So I am hoping that the org is amicable to alternative revenue streams. I know that during COVID, Ignition approached them about something similar, where we wanted to see if we could sell posters and t-shirts just to kind of keep the lights on while there were no events. And we kind of did the math back then, and doing that as a standalone thing without an event associated would have changed our taxes in some kind of way that we would have had to have paid the accountants more. I wasn't treasurer, don't ask me, I don't know math. But having it tied to the event would mean that we could sell it through the ticketing site, and that would be just part of the event, and it would bypass those weird tax laws that would then require us to file like state returns and shit. So it is a challenge. I think we should anticipate in future years that the lower drinking will continue. I don't know if it will, but I feel like that's the safest thing. I don't want to see next year rely on getting 30 or 40 grand in booze sales, because unless things change again, that probably isn't going to happen anymore. And it It is a difficult place to be because in my mind, I'm thinking this is the best thing for our community. We had way too many people hurting themselves. And I constantly left events wondering who was going to get in an accident on their way home. And I didn't feel that this year. And I haven't not felt that at an event in a while. So I don't really know. I think an indoor-outdoor event may be out of reach for a couple years, unless we do something real low-key, like Rusty's Warehouse kind of low-key, just because the indoor facility is going to be X dollars, but then if you also have outdoor, that's fencing, that's portas, that's all these other expenses that you wouldn't need in an indoor-only space. And you'd only need those in an outdoor-only space. So like having that hybrid space does exponentially increase the number of expenses and how much they'll be. It increases the complexity. That's just, you know, my thought process for next year based on the struggles we had and the community demand to get in for free. I'm not super duper sure the best way to approach that, honestly. I would say the venue kind of is the source of the pain points to a lot of extent, that and the timeline. Let's say in my rep report, the first thing I wrote is, you know, there is, I don't know if you've ever heard of something called the triple constraint, and it's usually depicted as a Venn diagram, and it's good, fast, cheap. And in the middle, it does not exist. And this was a fast fucking event. This is one of the fastest events this organization has put on in a long time. And that leads to cost overruns. We had to pay expedited fees on a lot of things. We had to pay for expedited shipping. We had to pay late fees for things because we just we weren't enrolled in time to do things on the right schedule, or we didn't have a means to pay. In some cases, we had to pay extra because a lot of vendors who work with events, and I think Reboot can vouch for this, tend to be kind of old-fashioned. And they'll do things like charge you more for credit cards. And that can be like a decent chunk that is otherwise avoidable. You know, these are the people you have to call them and have a long conversation where they then send you a long document of estimates. As someone who worked in tech a long time, it's weird. But these are a lot of times just not super technical businesses, and they do have those additional constraints and timelines. I think another major issue was that just closer to the event, it feels like it is no longer a community priority to a certain extent, where camps are dropping out at the last minute, just like, whatever. And in at least one case, that kind of left us on the hook because it was the camp who was going to be bringing the skating that we had been advertising, which left it on us. Because otherwise, you know, literally half of the indoor space would have been just empty. You know, a lot of it is just the cost of the venue makes everything more. Union labor balloons the cost by tens of thousands of dollars. The city contracted electrical is the more expensive choice. City security is more expensive. It is, you know, it has a trickle down effect on a lot of things, but, you know, filling the space, even just on our own with decor, would have been too much money. We wouldn't have had it.
Quick time check. I don't want to cut you off, but we're about 10 minutes in, and I'd like to leave at least a few minutes, couple minutes for conversation or questions, conversation.
No, go ahead, ask me stuff. I'm just talking because no one has asked anything or raised a hand.
Fair enough. Does anybody have any? Well, I'll make sure you get a chance to say anything else that you had to say. But does anybody have any questions for C-Comp production team? Jimmer.
Yeah, for anybody who wants to know the context of that comment, it was a congratulatory energy that I was sharing with Kelly here about hitting that mark. Because
I'm used to selling shit out.
I know, but it was a known variable from go. And that's something that is important for you and Crash to keep in mind. Like, you did actually hit the mark that was the plan under time, to that effect. It was all the things you mentioned. And so thank you for bringing it all. Additionally, I appreciate that you reached out to the org having to do with other matters that we could be selling, because that would be great to be able to, have merch tables, like we have kind of, like, if you could pre-buy things, if you're like
Yeah, exactly. And if we
we've already got that. Like we've got the bags from 2015 still in storage, right?
If
Like it's
were to do like bundled, when you can even pre-order it and pick it up on site, and then we'll print them in advance and not have to have overruns. Like,
yeah, so it's something that we have done. You know what I mean? Like the t-shirts that we have, like, did we not sell them all at all ever? I mean, definitely the contributor ticket in the past has been the way that we make like little packages like that. Sorry, Matt?
Past the t-shirts we used to do before COVID, those were volunteer swag.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the budget for that anymore, but that used to be, you got a t-shirt if you worked, I think it was 2 shifts.
I remember the feedback on volunteerism hours from months past, and people want those again. People want
I
to
want those
look
again.
like Josh Olson. They want all the gear. They want the
I want
t-shirt
those
and the jacket. And okay, they can't be as tall or as cute or as shiny, but they can be wearing the gear, right? And that's I did hear some of that.
I want those again. I wear my CComp t-shirts from like 18 and 19 all the time. It's just, a lot of this year was just me shooting down leads one after another, like, no, we can't afford it. No, we can't afford it. Not in the budget. Arr. And that's like, I don't like to be that guy. Like, I'm good at being that guy. I just don't like to be that guy. I like to be the let's make it happen guy.
That's Star.
Yeah, to reiterate part of what Jimmer said, like you and Crash made a lot out of a little, and I very much appreciate all of your hard work. I know that you were not set up to succeed with the situation, and y'all still managed to pull it off. Like, the fact that we had a party is still pretty amazing. So thank you for your work. And the events committee, I think, is also on the, like, let's look for a new site. Like, we're still looking for Critical, but we can also look for Sneak Compression while we're looking for Critical. We just started talking about this last week. So I think the new site thing is, everybody agrees that would be a really good solution. And it's all really hard thing to do.
Sorry.
Yeah. And I think
reach out to do you know Rusty from Hazard Factory? He bought a secondary warehouse next to his primary warehouse that he is using for events. And he's the only business on that street. So a street closure, like,
interesting.
Street closures are cheap. Like, it does not cost a lot to get the city to throw down some barricades.
Yeah.
It's like, we've done that in the past, and it is cheap. It is. I think it would be a very solid option. And I feel like there's a big community demand towards getting back to our roots of doing it ourselves. It feels weird to be paying all these people to put shit up for us. Our DPW is kind of standing there with their thumbs in their noses, like,
Yeah, and also supporting the community. Like, the participants in the community that have these spaces would also be great, right? For it to all be ours would be super great.
Yeah.
Love that.
I will put it on the
that
list.
Sounds like a great conversation to take up at the next event committee meeting.
Yeah, I'm just dropping it out there to get it on people's radar, but I get you.
All right. Any last questions or comments?
The volunteer thing concerns me, honestly, because it's gotten a lot worse since COVID. It's substantially, there's a much higher demand for, I'm not showing up and doing anything unless I get in free. And we don't have that kind of money where we can just throw big volunteer appreciation parties where everyone's getting in free. Like, especially, if it kind of feeds into itself too, because we tried to do, like, next year you get half off, but then people know we're going to be desperate a day before and start comping people just to make sure the bar doesn't have to close at 11 o'clock. So then people don't sign up because they know if they hold out, they'll get in free. And it's like, it is a hard balance, but we're supposed to be a community of participation, and it feels like the default has become spectators. And I also want the thong.
I think that's a good
I also know where we can get those printed.
I think that's a good conversation too, and it's one that we can take up at the
Yeah.
fledgling volunteer committee that is on the verge of being born.
Yeah, like, I mean, that's my experience having produced this year, is that it is a lot harder to get volunteers than it was in 17, 18, and 19. And the people who do volunteer, they aren't willing to do it for half off next year. They aren't willing to do it for half off that year. They want to get in free.
And I'm sure our volunteer committee chair people are sitting in the room taking notes.
Yeah. I would say, like, it almost feels like at some point, do we just do like some weird Ask JC Penney's thing where we make tickets $100 because we know 80% of people are going to get in half off, and it actually needs to be 50 to be solvent? Like, that feels super sketch, but you know, it almost feels like we should build in the anticipation that half to 3/4 of people are going to get a volunteer price ticket for sea compression when forming the budget.
Cool. I want to echo the thank you from earlier. Thank you so much, Radioactive.
Thank you to the board for stepping up, because we would not have had anyone to sell drink tokens. Like, you sat there all day, and I know that people had COVID and there was other shit going on. So I appreciate the hell out of all of you. I see you there working all day, and thank you.
It was our pleasure. Thank you, Sea Compression. All right. Moving on. We are at minutes. So we actually successfully approved the December meeting minutes asynchronously. And so we don't have that to do tonight, but we have not yet approved the minutes from the budget meetings. So, hey, board, I'm sure all of you have read the minutes from the budget meetings. Do any of you have amendments or discussion on either the December 13th or December 16th budget meeting minutes? All right, hearing no discussion or amendments, we'll consider them approved. Next, excuse me, nonsense. Let's review the good, bad standing policy draft.
I will share the link. I think there's been some discussion about whether part of it is in conflict with the bylaws. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, you should have the link, and I think everyone should be able to view it. Marley, did you have your hand up?
No, I was trying to click on the in-call log and I accidentally hit the hand.
Got it. Yeah, so if folks want to take a look at this, we got comments from folks. We made some edits. Magic and I had a discussion about whether, so the bylaws specifically state something along the lines of that. The directors, actually, let me just pull it up. I have it right here. There's sort of two parts of the bylaws which we had questions about whether they could be considered in conflict with this. So the first one is Article 4, number 25, general powers. So the general powers of the corporation shall be vested in the board of directors, which shall have charge, control, and management of the property, affairs, and funds of the corporation, and shall have the power and authority to do and perform all acts and functions not inconsistent with these, the laws of the state of Washington, the articles of incorporation, and these bylaws. I have an answer to some of and then there's another one which talks about in same article for 26, it talks about you can't give a responsibility to a committee that will take away responsibility from the directors, like take away legal responsibility from directors. Oh, Tuck. So, okay, that's good to know. Yeah. So when I look at these two things, I think having a policy of operating in a certain way doesn't take away the board's rights to do the things the board is empowered to do. So I'm not worried about Article 20. I'm not worried about point 25 and Article 4. And the other one, just basically the point 26 and Article for is also saying like, even if you delegate something, directors are still legally responsible. And I don't think that's it. I don't think the policy of delegation or of giving responsibility to certain groups prevents that from being valid. Yeah, okay, so Tuck is just agreeing in the comments. So I'm not super worried about those things. Magic, if you have more about that you wanted to say, be happy to discuss that.
Sure. Yeah. No, I wasn't disagreeing that there should be delegation, and
Yeah.
the spirit of this conversation is mostly in the oversight role of the conduct committee over the board, which I
Right.
support. To be clear, I just want this like section to be pretty ironclad, such that there's not a conflict in that oversight role. I think that all of this delegation is a-okay and good. I just don't think that it's possible for this like sub policy of a committee's sub policy to override the board's authority. Having it express it as a 2/3 majority is sort of doing that a little bit, but I think that's sort of a reasonable construction that allows the oversight to still stand. I also had a proposal that the board of directors, like overriding the conduct committee, would have to have notice period and like some briefing period for any like confidential or sensitive topics. But that wasn't adopted, which is fine. Just give context for the group.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just to give more context on this. So let me just show this really quick. So the specific area, the specific part of the policy that we're talking about is a section that talks about appeals. So when we're talking about members not in good standing, so what we have here is a definition. There's a process, duration, consequences, notice, reinstatement, and appeals. And so in the appeals section, there's sort of, this is a dual pathway. There's two ways that someone can become not in good standing. One is the board can vote someone to not be in good standing by a majority vote, which is something we're establishing in this policy. But we're also trying to harmonize this policy with existing functions that exist on the board. So the conduct committee today has the do not attend list, and we want to make sure that the do not attend list is under the umbrella of not in good standing, right? Because when we consider someone to be removed from events, we also want to have a consistent process to decide, does this person, should they be in Slack? Should they have access to our digital properties, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea here is the not in good standing is an umbrella that includes the do not attend list, which includes people who are not permitted at events. The concern I have is if the conduct committee chooses to put someone on the do not attend list, and we have we give the board the ability to just override that significantly reduces the oversight capabilities of the conduct committee. So in the past, we had talked about the board being the final decision maker, right? The conduct committee making recommendations, and then the board finally deciding if someone would be added to the do not attend list. We decided not to do that, in part because we wanted independent oversight for the conduct committee on the conduct committee for the board, particularly in cases where a board member is the person under investigation. So this change, in my mind, removes some of that oversight strength by basically putting us in a position where, which we've seen in the past, we've seen an analogous situation in the past where if the conduct committee and the board are at odds with one another and the conduct committee makes a determination, the board can just turn it over. And it's assuming that the board is all in alignment about disagreement with the conduct committee, which I think Magic has said it could be unlikely. I think that also depends on of the board and the specific situation that we're in, and it's a negative edge case that I'm concerned about leaving open, but I'd be interested in other people's thoughts about it.
Jimmer, and then Radioactive.
Yeah, like I dropped in the chat, what you're saying, it sounds a lot like the checks and balances we have in government. Yes, it's uncomfortable at times, and no, it doesn't feel good at times. But in theory, the concept is healthy structurally in that context. And I wonder if this is analogous to that, to others.
It's not a check and balance if one group has the power to just override the decisions of the other. Especially
Is
if
it
they're
not
the one.
though?
That's sort of kind
Isn't
of
that
part
like
of the deal of
basically
the
the
committee.
point of checks and balances? Like the Supreme Court can say, no, the Congress did wrong, and Congress can say, no, the president did wrong, and the president can say, no, the Congress did wrong, or whatever. Like,
If we think that inclusion is necessary, like we can. I think my concern is we've seen scenarios where committees that were given this power were overruled by the board, and that significantly hampered their ability to be effective. We've seen that in recent history, so that worries me. If that's not a concern by this group, if we think that the conduct committee's decisions shouldn't be independent of the board, then I think that including that clause is fine. But if we feel strongly that that independence is important, then I don't think we should include that clause.
sounds like Kelly's got some
right,
experience in that.
radioactive, then Marley, then magic, and I'll join the queue also.
So Marley can also to this, I think, but they and I were on the board that had to override the then conduct committee's assessment. The board of directors has the legal and fiduciary responsibility to the organization. No committee does. So if a committee lets someone in who does a thing that maybe people on the board know they shouldn't be doing and shit goes bad, it's the board and the org who are screwed. We can't legally offload liability for the safety of people at the event to third parties. The board has to be the final step because they're the ones with the legal and fiduciary responsibility there.
I mean, that's not necessarily the case. You can definitely contract out liability. I think that what the
training. Like, these aren't counselors or therapists, these are just community members. Like, you have to have some justification. Just think of the worst shit that can go bad. Can you justify it in court? Let random people with no formal academic or professional training in risk assessment or therapy or dealing with sexual assault victims make those calls, and now something went wrong because of a decision they made that the board followed without question. So it's like the board's the one who carries the insurance. They're the ones on the paperwork. That's the heads that'll roll. So that's kind of why it had to be that way. In the past, it was just legally, we're the ones in trouble if shit goes bad.
Marley, you're next.
Oh, sorry, I'm on mute. It's happened twice that I'm aware of. Radioactive was there for one of those. So yeah, I mean, exactly what she said. If we are the ones that bite the bullet if this thing goes wrong, and in those cases, it can sometimes go wrong. So these are people that do not have any formal training, and that's part of the issue.
Magic.
Yeah, I still support oversight. The reason I was trying to get the board to have sort of a direct way to override the conduct committee with a 2/3 majority was to make it not be in conflict with the bylaws. I think ultimately the board can dissolve the conduct committee by a 50% vote, which I think would be controversial and would not support, obviously. But structurally, I'd rather there be an escape hatch that's easier than that. I think we probably should amend the bylaws to support this oversight role and have it be more ironclad. But the flow to get there, I think, means we should have this policy be concordant and agree with the bylaws, and then we update the bylaws, and then we update this policy, not have it be in conflict from the start and then be in a weird spot where it's in a contested state and we have to have a lot of drama about how to resolve that in the future.
Nonsense.
That sounds fine. I mean, so that means we have to go back and edit it, and then we'll review it at a later date. One thing I want to clarify too is my primary concern I know I referenced the other conflict between the RAC and the board. My primary concern is less about scenarios where we're letting people back in. I think that's really important, but it's more about a scenario where board members are being protected by other board members when they are behaving in ways that are harmful to the community, and ensuring that we have like a really strong method of intervening if that happens and we discover that kind of a situation. I think that something we've been concerned about, we've talked about, is people having personal relationships on the board, the very closeness of this community, concerns about situations like that make people not necessarily unbiased. And I think that one of the purposes of the conduct committee, at least in principle, is to be an oversight committee for the board. I totally agree with Magic that we have some work to do to harmonize the bylaws with our intentions for the conduct committee. Perfectly happy to take this away and to do some work with regard to edit it so that we can pass it sooner with the changes suggested, and then do some work to see if there's something we can do to adjust the bylaws to make this oversight more strong. And so I'll take that as an action item and go from there, unless there's something else that we should discuss.
Marley, then Magic.
So 2 other things. We've had 2 examples in the last 5 years of interpersonal relationships on the board where the board has taken care of it. So I don't think that we actually have the issue with the board not handling their own issues. And secondly, one of the problems with the board not being able to act is that there are timeliness factors where, in the case of the RAC, things weren't done in time. And in the case of the conduct committee, there may not be time. The board sometimes has to act in a very, very quick fashion. And if we can't make those decisions, that can be extremely problematic.
Sorry, what decision are you talking about, Marley? I'm not sure I understand.
What was your question?
What decision are you talking about the board needing to make quickly? I'm not sure I understand.
So there are decisions where people have to be removed or added to a list. And if we don't have the ability to make that decision, then
that
that's a problem.
decision is included in the document. So this document isn't taking away. So yeah, I think we got one thing I want to mention to you. I'll clarify. The document defines what it is to be a member not in good standing, a suspended member, as we can call it. So it goes through and talks about how a member can be put in bad standing. One of the ways that is done is by the board voting on that. There is this final part about appeals in the end, where there's a discussion of appeals for members who are not in good standing, suspended members. And because of harmonization we've tried to do with the do not attend list and being not in good standing, there's some weirdness about how the board appeals things and how the conduct committee appeals things, and we tried to make those things compatible. But this definition is designed for execution by the board. So the board can and should, if necessary, put people in bad standing. And that is the majority of what the document talks about. But we attempted, like I said, to harmonize some of these efforts that we're doing at the same time to make sure that there are not multiple independent pathways to be not to be in bad standing that are not consistent in how they're enforced.
Magic, Radioactive, then Marley, and we should probably move on since Nonsense has already conceded that we're probably going to be taking this up at a future meeting.
I'm not on the list again.
Oh,
That
okay.
was just-
No worries. Magic, then Radioactive. Magic, you're muted.
Sorry, I'll flip the order. I have 2 statements. The first is contesting that notion that we don't need to approve this right now. I'd prefer that we approve it now and know that there's a conflict that we need to sort out and have an imperfect but generally good policy to work forward from. So I'm in support of actually voting on it now and would vote to approve it. The second thing is on that duty to the community for the oversight that exists also, that needs to exist also for the conduct committee. It's possible for the conduct committee to make decisions that are harming the community. That's why this bidirectional sort of oversight needs to exist, in my opinion. But again, I would be inclined to vote on this policy as it exists right now, even though I disagree with one section.
Radioactive.
I just wanted to mention, I understand 100% the not wanting people on the board to protect each other, because that was a thing that happened in like 2016, something like that. But I'll point out, at least one of the times the board overruled the conduct committee, it's because people on the conduct committee were protecting their friends in the community. So this is a situation that can arise no matter who has the final say. And it is, humans are humans. And it is just as likely that people on the other side on the committee will see a friend's name and have trouble being impartial.
Nonsense.
Yeah, so the conduct committee has a process for recusal, which is a part of how it functions, which is just to say that there's in theory, a way for people with conflicts of interest to remove themselves from processes. That's one. Two, I just want to call our attention to the fact that we've had this discussion about oversight before. We talked about the way in which the conduct committee and the board would interact with one another and what we were comfortable with in our December discussion of the conduct committee charter. What we discussed at that time was that the conduct committee would be given the power to remove board members without board members then ratifying and approving that, and that the board had the power to dissolve the conduct committee. And that was the check and balance and the kind of oversight that we believed was necessary. It's fine if that's changed or we're adjusting how we think about that reciprocal responsibility. But I just want to mention that we've actually talked this through in the past, and we came to a conclusion or at least a decision. We decided something as a group, and people seemed to be in agreement at that time. It's okay if things have changed, but I feel from this conversation that has been missed. So I just wanted to mention that.
Jimmer, and then I'd love to see us get either to a resolution or to move on. We've got 80% of the agenda left with 30% of the meeting.
Oh yeah, just only thinking, I think that dissolution of the committee would never be an actual goal. I think that addressing the specific action, it would be the specific goal. And I think that attention should be kept in view if possible.
Beth Star?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Nonsense, but that was never really like what we were talking about. The dissolution of the committee was like nuclear option, like red button option. Like this has gone way outside of the scope of what it was intended to. It is the one like final check and balance, but it's not like it's intended to be used on a regular basis, right? Like
at the time sorry.
Go ahead.
At the time we discussed it, it was placed against the conduct committee's power as a balance, as something that was considered to be appropriate, right? If we think the conduct committee is protecting their friends, is removing board members unilaterally with no cause, right? Like, you could remove the committee chair. Specifically, the board has that power. Like, I could be removed at any time if they decided that I was running the committee in a way that was inappropriate. That's also a power that the board has. And the conduct committee itself could be dissolved. So like, there's actually two options there, right? So if I'm running the committee, I'm going buck wild and like abusing my power, like the board has the power to remove me. I don't think that's actually a nuclear option at all. I think that would be a pretty standard thing you would want to do if somebody started to behave that way as a chair. So all that said, like, I'm not against this kind of reciprocal relationship, but I do think that, like, as you can see, our opinions about things sway back and forth quite regularly. I feel like in these matters, it does not behoove us to allow that kind of back and forth if we can avoid it, if we can make decisions concisely and decisively, and be really serious if we're going to overturn something. I think 2/3 majority is a pretty reasonable bar for that as well. But I just wanted to mention that we had talked about that before.
Magic.
I move that we adopt the proposed policy for membership suspension as written and allow the conduct committee to make further refinements in the future.
I second.
Is there any debate or discussion? All right, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt the membership suspension policy as written. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I
All opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. While we're here, real quick, since we've got either almost or all of the board in the room, we wanted to quickly discuss whether we should set a meeting time between now and the next board meeting for ratification of the conduct committee charter draft that is still in progress. Nonsense proposed that we could set a date 10 days from now or whenever we're all available. Another option would be wait till the next board meeting. I think, we've been swirling on all of this for a very long time, and it would be neat to get some things locked in, but so what do we think for date and time and how long this will take? Or we can have this whole conversation asynchronously if all of you will participate in that conversation in Slack soon so we can get this scheduled. Bethstar?
I mean, I think my vote is sooner the better. I'd rather not have this be another chunk of another board meeting when we've already gotten far enough along on it. I think a separate meeting or on Slack is a better choice than putting A, waiting another month, and B, having us all be 30 days out and being like, what did we talk about the last time? And having to recycle, which is what we're doing.
Okay, I love that. Jimmer, go.
Yeah, me too. Can we rock it in order of this? Doing the asynchronous check-in, check stuff, any questions, and then 10 days notice from that point of comfort zone for all people involved. Because like Magic said today, even the thing that we've got has a paragraph that they're uncomfortable with and still went with it. So there's still some kinks to work out. Let's work out those and then do the 10-day. What do you say? So that we don't rush ourselves.
To clarify, we're talking about a different document. So we got approval for the document that you were just referencing today. It's certainly still amendable, but the discussion for scheduling the next meeting was review and approve the conduct committee charter. So I think we're currently operating under the first draft, the draft conduct committee charter from several months ago. And we wanted to get it to let's say the final V1 of the conduct committee charter that has even been reviewed and feedback incorporated from the alumni at this point. And I think even the community saw a link to it the other month. Magic.
Sort of split between what you're saying and what Jimmer's saying. I think that it would make sense to have a special meeting for this or do our 10-day email thread thing and a special meeting if it's not unanimous by that time. Maybe in between this and the next board meeting. I don't think we should spend a lot of time sinking into this if we're not ready to approve it right now.
Okay. So I think action to nonsense, unless somebody wants to drag this in a different direction using a motion, I think action for nonsense is get to a final proposal that you're comfortable with and float that to the board. We can quickly attempt to amend and then maybe get to unanimous approval via email. If not, we'll do the 10 days notice, like the preemptive 10-day notice thing that we've done recently, and have the meeting to hash out the final bits. Nonsense, go.
Can I just notice a 10-day meeting today and then I'll get it to you guys when it's finished and then we'll go from there?
You can ask me to do that for sure, and I will happily comply. So 10 days from today, January 25th. All right, let me look at.
It's a Saturday.
All right, January 25th, what time? Board
Noon?
thoughts?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. All right. All right, I'll send out an email. Sounds good. Next. C compression trademark. Jimmer, go.
Hey, just sort of a heads up. I've been messaging with Feynman and talk about this. I got the paperwork from Corpru about our C compression trademark. It is expired by a good shake. Feynman looked into it. We kind of dropped the ball as a board back in about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So I'm sort of moving forward with it. If anybody would like to join me in paperwork production, I've also been writing, what are they called, charters for grants and whatchamacallit, acculturation. But we're gonna workshop those in the committees. So C compression trademark, we got to get that back in. If anybody has a love for paperwork, please talk to me because I'd love you to do some of what this paperwork is.
Hey, Jimmer, I'm happy to help. Where did you send that to me? Did you email it to me?
I sent it to you in Messenger since that was your preferred method
okay.
at
Yeah,
some
I'll
point in the
check Messenger.
past.
Sorry, I haven't been using social media much at all lately.
That's cool. Just let me know what you prefer and I'll use that. And I'll be, yeah, because it's one of those little hanging chads from the past that I'm, trying to tie up. Also, who is it? Nonsense and Jess, some of the charter for communications has event committee copied into it. I used all of the committee charters as sort of models for the acculturation and grants so that I could just sort of get an idea for the shape, and found that communications uses the word events in a few paragraphs.
Yeah, no, we don't have a charter. That's something that I'm working on.
Cool. All right. So I guess I found a working copy. Sorry about that. So rock and roll. And if you don't
It's a
have
really
what I have,
old working copy that somebody else copied over.
okay. I didn't look too closely other than to be like, but because, we had none at all over at Acculturation and Grants.
Yeah.
So we are dialing that in directly. If you want to workshop that in the background, we can do that some other time. Happy to chat.
Cool. Thank you.
And thank you, Tuck. See you. That's all.
All right. Cool. Next. Marley, diversity and inclusion topic.
Yes. So I've mentioned this before, but we haven't done much about diversity inclusion in a really long time. When I was on the board previously, we actually had a little bit of a budget for it. The last event that I'm aware that we did as INW was the event that I sponsored in 2020. So I would like for us to consider putting some money aside this year for some general ride initiatives in a similar fashion to what the org has done. Specifically some tickets, because the only tickets that we have available right now are for Indigenous burners, and I don't really think that is an ideal situation. I'd like to see us offer some tickets for all burners of color, similar to the ride tickets that the org has done for the last couple of years. And I have a format of the ride afterburn report that they did in 2022, and I'll send it around to the board, and a draft policy that we can kind of look at for a more formal discussion, because I know we're kind of running a little bit late this time around, with a more thought out proposal for us to vote on in February. But the way that the org looked at it is it wasn't just burners of color. As you know, it's accessibility, it's queer, it's children, it's everything that is not a standard traditional class of burners. And so they have a pretty well thought out plan. I was a recipient of a ticket 2 years ago, and I got a chance to talk on the radio about some of their initiatives. So I would like us to at least consider putting some money aside for that this year. My initial thought is maybe we can consider doing 5 tickets. It's not a lot, but it's something, and we can discuss how we would want to allocate those tickets.
Simon, you're on mute if you're talking.
Hand, Beth Star.
Hi. Marley, when you say tickets, are you talking about critical and C compression?
Initially critical, but yes, I would like to see C compression as well.
Okay, thanks.
Gotta go.
Yeah, Marley, do you see this as an effort that's happening outside of like the production levels that mitigate both the events separately, or is this just like an overarching board initiative?
Yes, as a board initiative.
If I could just jump in, Gattaca, I recall you actually reaching out into some committee recently for something to this effect. What was it that you were thinking about?
Yeah, I had put out into the events committee about us revisiting radical inclusion as either being an initiative like this, where we have radical inclusion tickets, very similar to the work that I had done with Soak last year, where we had given out 65 tickets to be dispersed to the community for exactly what Marley is talking about here, but also like how far we wanted to be able to extend that and go more than just tickets, but essentially just wanting to get this conversation started. But Marley, you are doing the work, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, this conversation actually started, like you said, a couple years ago with conversations I had with some of the SOAK leads at Critical, and they were able to make it work last year. They did a really great job, and I know you were part of that. So if you would like to help, I would definitely, well, assuming the board approves something, I would love to have people on board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jimmer.
Yeah, considering what you have in mind, I wonder if you have specific numbers for getting the word out as far as like, do you want $2,500 and 10 tickets to each event? Do you have any specific numbers that you would like to like for us to think about and move with?
Well, I originally just said 5 and 5, but we can talk about numbers. As Gattaca said, SOAK provided a lot more, but we don't have a ton of money set aside for slushiness in our budget. So something we should talk about.
That's Star.
I mean, just to be clear, I'm very for this. I think this is awesome. We have talked about it in the events committee in a much more general sense on the list of reasons why growing Critical is a thing that's on the table, is because we would love to have more radical inclusion of all sorts. And we don't have that range right now because we have a very small amount of tickets. But I know that Reboot and crew is negotiating for more space at the Masons campground, which means theoretically we could sell a few more tickets, which means that 5 could go to 10. I think my personal vote would be, if we do up the ticket sales, that I would like a large portion of that to go towards radical inclusion, because that's one of the things that I was very excited about, being able to sell more tickets in order to offer more.
You're here. All right. Do we how do we want to proceed? Do we have a motion?
Well, at first I'd like to have, it sounds like it's a pretty positive reception. So I'll draw up some more detail, and I've got a pretty good draft from what the org did, and I can put in some of the specificity of what they provided. I don't want people to just come and be kind of flailing around Critical. So I want to make sure that people have a mentor assigned. Like, the things that they offered us were things like, we got to tour the different groups, and we got to, like, if you wanted to volunteer with different organizations, they set all this stuff up before we got to the burn. So there are a lot of things that I would like to put in place, and I'll presumably, if Reboot is amenable, I'll have some conversations with production as well. And I'd like to set up something a little bit like what we do with Lead Exchange, but, have a board member or former board member, and I'm happy to volunteer as that person to, make sure people have a contact, so they're not coming to Critical and just not having anybody to talk to. But I'll put all of that in place and put the numbers together so that we can have something to vote on in February.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you, Marley. Oh, Reboot's hand is up.
Is the intention of this initiative to solicit people who aren't already part of the community?
No, the intention is to provide funding for tickets and then put it out there so that people can apply. So it could be people that are in our community that need funding, or it could be people like I'm in the Black Burners group, the multi POC network. So it could be, people from our community that need funding. It could be people that generally go to SOAP, but we'd like them to come to Critical. It's just burners of color that we'd like to see more. We had 7 last year, and it'd be great if we could have more.
Jimmer.
Yeah, to the term our community, I would say some punk rock evangelical works with the 10 principles would be a good thing in the greater, broader world. So I think that the idea of our community outreach is key. I mean, I sit with the skewed view of acculturation and a lot of life living outside of this community, because I was over on another continent for the majority of the last 20 years. So as far as outreach goes, I think that we shouldn't be seeing boundaries to that effect.
Yeah.
And there are ways of doing outreach through art and artistic communities that exist here in the Seattle area as well, and targeting specifically underrepresented artist communities. Like, there's a lot of options that we can do here. Marley, I would love to be able to work with you, or at least give you any of the knowledge that I have. But ultimately, I think what it comes to is like making a proposal. So for next meeting, we can vote in on something. Is that the intent?
Yeah.
Magic, hand up.
I'm curious if Marley would be open to making a motion during this meeting. I think there's broad support. We just need like numbers of tickets or amount of dollars or something like that.
Well, the number I proposed was 5 for each event. That's kind of a swag number. So
Personally, I think 5 is low.
Yeah, I don't know what the price of tickets is going to be this year. That's, part of it. I haven't done that research, and I haven't heard anything yet as to what the price of tickets is going to be. So I would like to have a little bit more information about that.
Magic.
I think we could probably vote on that for a number of tickets, either 5 or 10 or something like that, without knowing the price ahead of time, and have it still bind.
That's Star.
Reboot, you can pop in here and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the ticket price for Critical is going to go up exponentially this year because we're not moving. So we don't have a lot of motivation to bump the price up unless there's something else that y'all are thinking about.
Okay, so do we think 5 is a good number? Do we think 10 is a good number? What is the board willing to contribute? And this is for each decompression and Critical.
10 each would be somewhere around $2,000, I think, just like super quick envelope math.
2,500, right? Critical is 200 and decompression is 50.
Okay, yeah, that's good refinement. Reboot, your hands up.
Well, just to address Beth's comment, we have yet to engage with the Masons about territorial expansion within the park. So we don't really know what additional capital investment we might be on the hook for. So while we don't anticipate a huge amount of base cost increases compared to last year for a similar amount of participants, we don't know if the expansion is going to cost us.
Yep. Gattaca.
And would this be a separate effort from the Indigenous ticket grant that exists?
Yes.
Okay.
Jimmer.
Would getting active money to you allocated this meeting provide a kickstart for the project if we did that today. Say like, you know, recognizing that this is a first step, which will include a number of tickets to be determined in the future in another separate conversation, would something like 2,500, and obviously I'd pull that number out of the air with no reference points of any kind, would a specific number be helpful to get anything you have in mind on the road between now and the next meeting, considering that it still might be more specifically refined at that next meeting?
The only difference is when I post in the groups, I'll say I will have 10 tickets available. That's about the only difference. So, I mean, I'm fine waiting, but Magic seems to want to vote. So I'm happy if somebody wants to make a motion for 10 tickets for each of the events.
So do you want to make that motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor to allocate 10 tickets for each of Critical and Sea Compression for the Burners of Color initiative that Marley is developing.
Can we call it the INW Ride Initiative? I want it to be as diverse as possible.
Absolutely. Yep, the INW Ride initiative that Marley is developing. All in favor say aye.
Oh, I thought we were doing
Aye.
debate.
Oh, right.
I literally have my
Is
hand
there any
up
debate
in-
or
We
discussion?
all have our
All right.
hands up.
Let's start.
So, my ignorant self would like to know what RIDE stands for. Radical inclusion, something, something.
Radical inclusion, diversity, and equity.
Oh, right. That makes sense. Thank you. B, I would propose an amendment to this and make it about a budget and not about an amount of tickets, since we don't know how much tickets are going to cost. And say, you know, if we want to do 10 tickets in each, then I'm doing math in my head, which I'm really bad at. 2,000. Like, so that would be like, what, like $4,000 with some wiggle.
4,500.
Thank you. With some wiggle at the current prices. So maybe we round that up to $5,000. And that way, no matter how much tickets end up being, we're kind of getting in that range as it like, and giving the board some idea about how much they're setting aside. I don't know. I'm flexible on this, but my inclination is to do it by money and not number of tickets.
Jimmer.
I would do both. I think that you've got a good point. We don't know what they are and how much they cost, but being as Marley said, getting that email out, the statement, I'm able to offer this many tickets. It's a great sentence in an email. Having some underline, I was thinking to add a dollar amount that's theoretical, just in case Marley runs into costs in the project. And that's, so I would, whether it's $1,000 or whatever. Marley, do you foresee any specific costs that you might incur in the process of offering these tickets?
Printing, and I probably should have asked for some money for vehicle passes.
Okay. Duly noted. So we could add vehicle passes to the specific allocated ticket structuring, perhaps. Right? Like, obviously we encourage ride sharing, and if there are 400 parking places and 1,200 people, that's 1 to every 3, right? So if 10 is a little bit like 9, so 3 or 4 parking passes. How does that feel?
I think 5 feels a little better.
Yeah, if we're being inclusive, right? Like, we want to have that flexibility. If we're
So
giving you a
moved.
ticket, we want to make sure you can get there.
So say if the goal is new people in the community, they aren't going to have the ties to find someone to carpool with necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay. So abstract printing, is $1,000 a good round number to work with from go?
Nonsense, then magic, then reboot.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I think if like we're aiming for the goal of getting tickets into hands, then ticket numbers are better. Obviously, like, we don't want runaway ticket prices, but I mean, Like, I would be shocked if tickets doubled in this year. And I feel like there's predictability to that. And I feel like the objective is tickets in hands. So I feel like that number is more important than the specific budget, which generally we know.
Magic, then Reboot.
Second that, I would prefer just ticket numbers so that we're not blocked on any pricing conversations down the road, and Marley can just act on this as soon as possible. I'd be fine also with 5 parking passes in the pool for Critical Northwest.
Was that a motion to amend?
Yeah, motion to amend with 5 parking passes. And I think like $100 is probably reasonable for printing costs.
All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Noting
Aye.
that Josh Olson's hand is still raised, I would like to.
Well,
That was
refer
just
to-
the amendment, not the
debate
actual.
debate is still ongoing. That
Cool,
was just
cool.
an amendment. Opposed to the
okay.
amendment. All right.
I
the-
thought
the
I
amendment-
I addressed the
Reboot.
same fancy thoughts.
Reboot, you're up.
I'm gonna split that one with you, Magic. I think that I helped. Good stuff.
Is this proposal for 1 year or to be applied in perpetuity? And if I may ask a second question, or I guess comment, I would appreciate more clarity about what the goal of the initiative is. We haven't yet really gotten a final report on the census. We have the data we can look at, but the way I kind of view this, there's a good process we can do where we look at the the results of the census. We decide what problems we are facing, and we establish smart goals, and then look at what our strategies are to address those goals. If the goal is to increase representation of underrepresented communities, it's unclear that just giving free tickets to existing burners accomplishes that goal. But if that's not the goal, I would appreciate it being stated.
So to answer the question, it's a pilot program. So for these numbers are for this year, and we can, see if it helps. The census data, like you said, is not all out there, although I did help enter probably 65% or 70% of the data. So I did have a good perspective on some of the numbers. And yes, I would say the goal is to increase representation of underrepresented groups.
That's Star.
So I think, yeah, this is for this year, because what if we do this and then we find out that we have 45 people that didn't get tickets that would have actually been qualified for this program, and we're really sad about it, right? It can go either way. So yeah, 10 tickets for this year and see how it goes. And also, I will 100% be the asshole here. Like, yeah, we don't have the census, but we're not fucking blind. Like, we know this community, and we know there are groups that are underrepresented in this community. Like, there's no question about that. We don't need a census to tell us that. So I'm not sure it's worth waiting for the census. We've been talking about this as a topic since I started doing production. And I would really like to see something happen this year.
Nonsense, your hand was up and it's down now.
That said everything I was thinking.
Okay. Reboot, you're up, and then Magic, and then it would be neat if we made progress either to the next item on our agenda or to an actual vote. Reboot.
Just quickly, my only point about the census was to help us establish specific goals. That's all. So we can say, for example, we would like to see one of these numbers increase by 2% or 4% or whatever, and in what time frame. That's the only reason I brought that up.
Magic.
Yeah, I would add that there's a timeliness element with the backdrop of society moving away from DEI stuff. I would rather we lean into making our community more inclusive as much as we can.
Sorry, one other thing to add. I did do some demographic studies of our state when we were working on the acculturation language data, and we are really underrepresented for a lot of ethnicities and and all of that. So we did do some research last year when we were looking at cultures and languages and who is in our state, and we're not doing very well.
Gattaca?
One of the biggest takeaways from doing it for SOAK was that people felt comfortable to be able to attend SOAK because we actually showed that we cared through actions rather than just words. And getting that kind of attraction, whether it be people who have been in the community for a long time and then have left subsequently, or even if it is new people and them having other representation, other people that they see that are like them, feeling like, wow, this place feels safe. I feel like I have community here. This can be good in a lot of ways that we could also track with metrics later on. But like Marley is saying, as a pilot program, I feel like this is a good start.
So the motion on the floor as currently amended is for 10 tickets to Critical, 10 tickets to Sea Compression, 5 vehicle passes, and $100 for printing.
Can we up the 1 to 5?
I don't think I need 5. I think I'm good with 100. But thank you.
Cool.
All right.
So moved.
So that's the question. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Hi.
All,
Aye.
all opposed, say nay. The ayes have it.
I didn't make it in time, but I was an I.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. All right, now let's do the lightning round. We've been good at getting out of here by 8:30. I think we're going to go a little over tonight. I'm not going to let us go way over tonight. But let's do text messaging for comms, megaphone. How quick can you make this?
I can make it really quick. Well, we would like to do text messaging. This would be an opt-in program that would be through Constant Contact, which we already have, and it would only be $10 a month to add it, and that would include like 500 text messages, which I would never hit. So the plan would be basically when you get an email, those who have opted into being texted would receive a text, and it would link to basically what the email is, because there is like a online hosted version of that. And we would, have some cool little descriptor of whatever it is. And so a lot of people have told me, a lot of feedback in comms committee meetings and just lots of conversations, that people would be much more like, they would notice a text message much more easily and would love to get it that way. Email seems to be one of those things that people can ignore, and then they miss things. And so I just wanted to try it out. Since it is for an entire year, it would only be about $120. I was wondering if we could add that to the budget, or have that come from the comms budget, which is nothing right now. Or approve that coming from somewhere. I don't know where from, but I feel like that's kind of something that we could figure out later. What do you guys think?
I like it a lot. Question, did you say 500 messages per month?
500 messages is the limit for the $10 edition. So that's, I'm thinking a text message for every email. So that's generally once or twice a month. This month it's a little bit more often during like the election time, that kind of a thing. So we would never have more than like a couple a week.
I imagine that number is times number of recipients, right? So like that would be if we had 1,000 people signed up for notifications, that example of 5 in a month would be 5,000 messages. What's their?
Oh, maybe I'm just a dumbass. Well, I guess I'll go over that and make sure. It made it seem like the amount of messages like that you send was what it was, but I'm not sure.
Nonsense.
So.
I would point out that in order to get text messaging approval, we have to often get proactive opt-in from folks. So we are not likely to get immediate proactive opt-in from every person who we have an email from. So we might be able to test this out at this budget.
Yeah, sorry, my brain just like didn't even think about it that way. It's also like if we did get more of a response, there is like a next tier of our current membership. I can go back and look for the actual cost of that.
Marley.
Is it one of those plans where like if the person is on the same network as you, it's free too, or is it just a flat $10?
What do you mean? Oh, this is through Constant Contact. So it's like our database for the emails. So it's not just like me sending a text message to everybody. Because that's not having it managed through Constant Contact means people can opt out. But it shouldn't, I don't think that it's anything like different based on like who's.
So it doesn't go through like Verizon or anything like that. It just goes from them. Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't even think about it. I can blame the fact that my brain has been addled from healing this month, but like I will relook at it and figure out like what the actual cost is, because I didn't think of it as in like per message that went to people. I thought of it as per, so I need to figure that part out.
Magic.
I move to allow the comms committee to spend money investigating this. And if it looks like it's going to go over budget substantially, we can reconsider, or they can reconsider automatically. But just want them to start experimenting.
Clinton's hand is up, and then Marley's. Yeah, I'm sure it would be a link. Clinton, then Marley.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I was fumbling with the mute button. As a business owner that deals a lot with communication with clients, I have been struggling with the email versus text. There's countless times where people will fill out my contact form. I will respond via email and get absolutely no response. And email sorters these days are sorting in all different ways. I feel in support of like having an opt-in text option, especially seeing so many people in this community pulling away from different social media aspects and not necessarily being responsive to email because they're busy with life, and that's just another tech thing. It is a little bit of a complicated situation, as you guys have, brought up about like the number. I've been dealing with this with my newsletter, and the number of recipients, what counts as being sent. I know I'm talking a lot with my hands right now, but I think text is a good avenue for those that opt in, and I am totally in support of this.
Marley.
I personally hate text messages, but I know there are a lot of people that just communicate by them. So I think it's a good idea. And I would like to amend the motion from I move to spend money to I move to spend $50 per month for the trial. And we give it a couple months and see how it works.
Oh, it's only 10 per month. So to try it out.
But
you said that was the annual commitment, that like you have to commit 12 months to get $10 a month. What they probably have a tier for organizations that are wimps and can't commit to a year, but it probably costs like twice as much.
What happens if you go over 500 messages? It's not going to be $10, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. You're right. That's a good idea.
So I think up to $50 a month is probably fine if we have these months that get busy.
Yeah.
So that's
second.
Is that $50 a month for the year? Like for a 1-year pilot program?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The motion on the floor is to spend up to $50 a month, total of $600 for the year for a 1-year pilot of the comms committee's fledgling SMS messaging program. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Continuing the lightning round, Beth Star, you wanted to talk about
It is like literally Yes, literally the quickest update ever.
Okay, great.
I am going to have, I'm saying this for my own, like, so that I stick to it. I am getting an application done in the next week. I have Dookie from DPW gonna like look it over for me to make sure I'm not missing anything major. I know I have at least already 2 candidates that are like chomping at the bit to apply. So y'all will see it before it goes live, because I want you to look at it too. But it's coming. Be ready. It's happening. That's it.
All right. Magic, you had a couple of topics. I think one of them is way too big for the -6 minutes that we have left, which is the self-hosted community forum. But I think we've got a tech committee meeting coming up Tuesday, like in 6 days, where we could
maybe hoping for just a budget authorization to explore it, setting it up so that we can have concept of cost for hosting. The broader conversation here that people don't have context on is the Reboot proposed, given that people are abandoning Facebook, that we host some self-hosted community that is not like at the whims of political pressures. And I was interested in exploring setting that up without necessarily leaning into like supporting it forever. Just sort of similar to what Megaphone just had, was like a small budget proposal to experiment with it. I think $50 a month would probably cover it. It's a little hard to estimate ahead of time, but if that sounds interesting, we can vote on it. Otherwise, we can punt and talk about it next time. But I feel like there's timeliness as people are jumping off of Facebook right now.
I love the idea, and I have strong beliefs that the right way to execute would be like, my personal position on this is that INW is not on the hook to rush here. Like, we don't have to be blazing the trail in terms of finding places for Facebook refugees to go. That's a neat thing for us to maybe do someday, but in my opinion, that's not a thing that we're on the hook for as an arts and education organization. I think solving this problem would be a great idea. I personally would be willing to help pay out of pocket for prototyping here, right? So like, this isn't even I want to make prototyping difficult. But I think that the right approach is for the tech committee to kind of put a little bit of thought into what this looks like, or for people to, again, I'm totally willing to put my literal money where my literal mouth is, and kind of help finance prototyping here. Reboot.
I just would like to point out that Facebook is one of the primary media through which we interact with our community, and people are leaving it. And that is, in my view, the reason to think about it sooner rather than later, because we want to interact with our community in the upcoming 6 months.
Nonsense.
I would counter that statement with the statement that I was talking, well, the thing that I was talking about in the chat just now. Like, we have about 5,000 people in our email distribution list, and we have about a 45% open rate. We get a ton of engagement from people via email, and our Facebook posts sometimes only reach like 100 people. So I just say that to say, like, there's a lot of activity on Facebook. There's a lot of things that happen on Facebook, especially during critical, that are important that maybe we should figure out how to solve for. I see that as really important. It's not our main or only way of connecting with the community. And that's part of the reason that we're looking for more ways to reach out and be in communication. So I don't think yeah, sorry. That's it. That's my 2 cents.
Beth Star.
I'm gonna walk right between all those lines and say I agree with Reboot. Like, yes, it's not our only way to communicate with people, but it is the spiciest. Facebook is. Like, we make progress on Facebook on discussions that we don't make in email. So I do think it is still an important thing that needs to be replaced sooner rather than later for the sake of critical. That being said, I don't think this is an emergency for the board, but if there's some people that want to spin up a group to start working on it with the tech committee that has nothing to do with the board, they could bring a proposal to us and we could look it over and decide if that's something that we're interested in adopting. Hint, people in this room.
Jimmer.
Yeah, a lot of that. I saw what Winter wrote as well, and I know that Winter and Magic, you guys are hanging out, and Feynman's got a really good idea here, workshopping this before we start running with it. Forums would be great. If we could host a literal forum on our website, like, I remember a lot of websites used to host forums. Like when I was working internationally, there used to be like privately held forums on specific areas for specific folks. Like if you're, you know, a specialist in a particular type of stuff, you know, in a particular area, there's an area for you to get together and chat. I think forums, Winter, you're absolutely right, are a format that we could perhaps host on our own internet. So I would encourage that for sure.
All right. I guess the one other contrarian maybe thing that I want to say here is I highly doubt if we've got 2,000 people active on Facebook that when 500 of them will leave, we will get even 250 of them to sign up for custom 85th social networking site that we wish that they would talk to us on, unless we can provide some massive incremental value that causes them to shift any fraction of their attention our way. All of that said, I am super duper. I love technology, right? Like I would love to see us solve this problem. And also, I'm not sure, like, well, I'll just flat out say I am not persuaded until I understand what the domain is that we're brainstorming in. And I definitely don't understand that domain yet. We've got hands up, DM, then Magic, then Bethstar.
Mine was just a real basic question. Does anybody have any history with Mailman from 20 years ago? Yep. It still works. I even host my own on bunnygroove.com. And the reason why I wanted to do is bring up a bit of history here. We had Burning Man-BCWA on Yahoo groups before it went under. And that had almost 3,000 members before it went under. And I tried in vain to pull the keys from the person who was in charge of it and put the list over on Google Groups and was unable to do so. So we had to restart, and we started Rat City Burners, which is in Google. It already has 229 people. It is mildly active, but I would love to see an email because it does get used. Email list. And that's one thing we can use Mailman for. So it's very simple. It works really well. It doesn't cost us anything to host that. So that's why I recommend that. Also, this is an idea you're absolutely going to hate, but you have 5,000 email addresses probably easily throughout the history of everything that you have, and go ahead and put them all on it and then have it where they can opt out. Better to piss everybody off once and get 2,000 or 3,000 people on there at once. It's one email where they're just not going to get any more. Also, Mailman has in the bottom of every single one automatic unsubscribe. So there's that too.
Magic and then Bethstar.
Yeah, we can definitely explore Google Groups as well. I think there is more of a notion of little forum communities and such. Both of the proposals I was interested in supporting were federated as well, which means they would be able to interact with the rest of the world, not just be a tiny corner. But we could have like private groups in addition to the interacting with the rest of the world. Yeah, I think that this is beyond discussion right now. I'm happy to explore this as a tech committee co-chair and member, and not like burden the board with more conversation about it though.
Bethstar.
Feynman, I am going to politely disagree with you in that I think you are right that we won't get a ton of numbers with this, but I don't think that is what we should be looking at for if it's a success. I'm going to echo Akshay in the chat that even if we do only get 150 people that engage with this thing, it is still going to be 150 people that have strong opinions and are going to want to have debates. And that's what we had on Facebook. And I would like to have that, right? And we know we have seen, just like with the moving debate, right? If people have something to say, they will join the thing. And to give them a place that's not Facebook to join the thing, I think is a good thing.
All right. Everybody come to the tech committee meeting on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. And I don't have to leave at 8 p.m. anymore. In 2025, I've rebalanced my calendar so I can hang out for 90 minutes or so on tech committee nights. All right. See you then. The other... We'll go with the other topic that Magic had, site search conversation. I don't know what the scope was there, and recognizing that we have negative 16 minutes, how many of those do you need?
I had rearranged to give you preference. I can just give a brief update. I think 30 seconds. I would say 52 people voted. 2,600 votes were cast. I would like to announce it more broadly, but we were hung up on a procedural thing from the events committee. I think I will, unless Beth Star disagrees, just go ahead and prepare a copy for announcing it so that we get more engagement. Yeah, cool. DM, are you okay with that too?
And that's go ahead, explain that a little bit more, sorry.
I'm asking if you're okay with me getting that Polis like site survey conversation going more broadly as soon as possible.
I wanted to give Beth Star some feedback, but this is the craziest month of our entire company history. So, and I was hoping to do that tomorrow morning. I actually calendared in so much time. Is there any time that we could do this maybe after 12 tomorrow or later?
Yeah. I'm around. Magic, are you around?
I would need to check my calendar, but I can hold on the comms until after tomorrow.
That'd be awesome. I would personally appreciate that.
Sounds good.
All right. And then I guess we can, I don't know I don't know how quick of a topic this will be. If this is not a trivial topic, then we should handle it asynchronously. But board, I wanted to have a chat with y'all. We've learned recently that the Masonic Family Park has their annual town hall, or I think it's called their annual meeting, something like that. In not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after that. And we need to figure out who the Ignition Northwest delegation is to that. I would humbly self-nominate and say it makes sense for the president of the org to go. I think it makes sense for the critical producer to go. And then I would like to have sensible role-based policy put together as a board around who the rest of that delegation is, if there even needs to be a rest of that delegation. I think that the agenda for that conversation will be expansion into the lower loop, as well as initiating, nailing down with the Masons what future. Yep, DM. So you're kind of implicitly involved in this conversation, but I want the board to understand and have put thought explicitly into who's going and why. Just because I think that this is an org level decision that we need to make because it's policy, and I think it's a board decision. Marley's hand first, then Beth Star.
I would strongly suggest one of the events committee chairs go, and at least one stewardship person, if it's possible, or somebody who's leaning in the stewardship direction.
Okay. Beth Star.
Marley read my mind as the events co-chair, but I cannot go. On the other hand, Feynman and Reboot and DM have been at all the events committee meetings in the past 6 months and are not going to have anything to say that I wouldn't like, that I'm going to say that's special. I don't know, Tuck, if you're available, but I have to say that I am not. And I am very confident that this group will present anything that I would have said.
What's the date and time?
Let me pull it up. I think it's January
25th is the next,
at
week from
1
this Saturday.
p.m. I believe. And yeah, I will just.
Didn't we just set a meeting for the 25th at 1?
We sure did. Oh dang! Well, I can't make it to that meeting.
Good call. That meeting to the 26th.
You're going to be chairing.
I mean, I would be happy. I could make either meeting. I would be happy to skip the board meeting if we have a quorum and attend the Masons meeting.
So traditionally, I don't know about traditionally, recently, Beep Beep has been our stewardship representative, sort of as a familiar face to the Masons. I think there's not a whole lot of continuity on the Masons side right now for that familiar face to be familiar from their perspective. DM has been going, I mean, to the point that DM pointed out that DM has been, well, maybe not recent Mason meetings, but I think that's been due to conflict. But I want to be like, I want to figure out as an organization, what role we believe DM has that gets him on the attendee list for this. and it could be that the event committee thinks that DM is the right person to go, right? And I would entertain that, but I want to hear someone say that phrase.
Yeah, I mean,
because
I'll make the case for Diem. Diem is one of the original founders of Critical, knows this event better than just about anybody else, and knows what our community needs, understands the historical context and relationship with the Masons. I think that he's got a lot of valuable experience and insights to provide. The one thing that
in the first place.
the one thing that I would just expect is that, in those conversations, that he not be an advocate for like things that result in site change, that this is about making 2025 the best Critical we can for our community. And as long as that's the goal, like, let's go.
I trust him on those grounds. So
yeah, exactly.
DM and everybody else, just to be super duper clear, I'm trying to weasel out of being the guy that capriciously wrote a list of attendees, right? Like, that's why I'm kind of pushing for this to be thoughtful and policy based. I don't have any preconceptions about what the right answers are.
But
Tuck, go ahead
I
and wrap
did
up
want to
your-
say a little bit more just about myself in terms of stewardship, a little about my background that I'm not sure people know. I have a Master of Environmental Law and Policy. I studied ecology and conservation. I don't have a degree in it, but I studied it in both undergrad and in my graduate education. So I'm pretty comfortable representing the stewardship angle. I also moonlight as Captain Planet.
Fair, touche. Okay, so I don't really want to send more than about 4 people, and I think we've got a credible 4-person list. So I would move to say, let's send Feynman, Reboot, Tuck, and DM.
My only caveat to that is you don't have a woman going, and I as a woman feel very strongly that there should be a woman present because this is the Masons, and you have 2 very, very capable women that would qualify for this. Decoy, I don't know if she's up for it, or Caleb, who also can do the stewardship portion and does have huge amounts of familiarity with the Masons. I get itchy about the idea of it being all mass presenting.
Agree.
Yeah, fair point. Okay, DM, then Jimmer, then Marley.
Agreed with that point, Beth. In fact, I was going to recommend Decoy as well, because I was actually with the meeting with her, myself, and Patty a year and a half ago at the Masons. And then we're the ones who brought back after discussions, brought back the ability to have clothing optional. So I saw her work her magic, and I think she'd be a wonderful fit. 5's a lot. And that's the other thing too, is that I do agree with Feynman, is that you do not want to overwhelm. 3 was a good number. 4 is kind of at the limit. I would not recommend 5, period.
That's how I feel too.
Just when it comes to contract negotiation, you don't want to bring a whole force there.
Well, let's be super clear. This is their annual meeting. I don't know how much negotiating we're going to be doing. I think it's going to be more of a lurk, talk for 5 minutes during, and then maybe catch them after and do a little bit of like hallway negotiation, right?
It's everything's a negotiation with those guys. Trust me.
Yeah, but my point is, it's not like we're going to be at the negotiating table. It's going to be while we're helping them stack chairs, we'll be talking.
That is how they negotiate.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
not to point it out, but it's a different style of negotiating. So that's exactly what it is. That's why Decoy would be really good, because she's seen it and she's done it.
Yep, fair enough. Marley, then Jimmer.
I think Decoy is great. My only concern is that we're sort of like already started into Critical 2025. So I would want to send people that have a role in this year's event, is the only thing I would think of.
Jimmer, your hand was up.
Exactly what Marley just said, and in echoing of what Josh wrote in the chat, Caleb is leading stewardship this coming year. I saw her last weekend. She's fucking feeling it. She's in a good zone, loves that space, would absolutely represent well. And I just want to say, Tuck, thank you for what you said about DM. I'm just glad to hear other people talk like I do about that kid.
Right on. Okay, so new proposed list: Feynman, Reboot, Caleb, DM. I move to send Feynman, Reboot, Caleb, and DM.
Seconded.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. All right.
Dope.
Thanks, folks. All right. We are now negative 26 minutes away from the end of our meeting. And I would like to, despite that, open the floor for any urgent, like can't wait till next month, updates from officers or committee chairs. Megaphone.
Here I am one more time. Can I start using the Blue Sky? I've created the Blue Sky, but I haven't started using it yet because
Seconded.
I wanted to wait and make sure run it by you guys first. I was just going to put like, small amounts of things like, hey, there's an election going on right now. Who wants to vote? That kind of a thing. But it is public and it is very much like Twitter. We used to have a Twitter. We don't use it anymore. We keep it so that somebody doesn't take it. But yeah.
I move that we start doing communications on Blue Sky.
Second.
All in favor? Well, any debate? I move to amend that to give the communication committee discretion for what social media channels they use to communicate on.
Ooh, love that. In
Thank you.
perpetuity?
Seconded.
Wow.
All right. Let's press
It is
that.
ignitionnworg.org. Like it is our email. It is our domain. Thank you, Magic.
Also set
So,
up criticalnorthwest.org if there's interest from production, but we can have that as a separate conversation.
all right. The motion on the floor is to give the communication committee discretion to shape their list of social media outlets in the immediate term to include also, but this is still at their discretion, Blue Sky.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
I
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, the ayes have it. Marley, I think I saw a hand from Magic and a hand from Marley on the committees and officers question. Yeah.
No, I was gonna
Oh,
motion that
sorry.
we use Blue Sky.
Okay, right on. Magic.
Very brief update. Tech committee is going to meet with Sunburn people, probably selling the radios. We would need to do that where we have radios before we sell them. So just wanted to update the progress on that. That's all.
See a DM. Okay, thank you, Magic. All right. Anybody have any other? Sorry for running long. Gattaca, thanks for the thanks for the pep talk about us getting a lot of business done tonight. We definitely did. This felt like a good, productive meeting. It was super long, excruciatingly so, but thanks for hanging in there, everybody. We'll try to get this back on the 90-minute cadence in future meetings. Anybody have anything before we adjourn?
Sinyakwara.
All right.
Boy. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody. See you all in a month.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.